Love is like a blessing from the King's. Only love can bring the healing from the Queen's. Love is like a blessing from the King's. Only love can bring the healing from the Queen.
In this Black Mestory series, we take an in-depth look at the region of West Africa, defined in a broad context as being as far north as Mauritania and as far east as Chad, with the Central African Republic on the southeast curving into Cameroon. This section in the series focuses on West Africa in the first millennium of the Common Era, following on from what we covered in part 1 of this series when we looked at West Africa before the Common Era. As we discussed in part 1, the most outstanding thing that happened in West Africa by the end of the first millennium BCE was the spread of the ironworking practices taking place in the southeastern portion of the entire region, spreading outward from Nigeria towards Central Africa as part of the cultural exchange known as the Bantu expansion. It is very possible that some of these practices were also spread further north from Burkina Faso into modern-day southwest Mali and southern Mauritania, where the ancient Ghana Empire would eventually be formed around 200 of the Common Era. The empire itself was probably fashioned on the great kingdoms of the east in Sudan and Ethiopia to put it in a position to do meaningful trade towards the Roman-dominated north coast and significantly reducing the risk of falling victim to slave raids. To support the trading activity along the Sahara trade routes leading from Morocco down the Niger River, domesticated camels were introduced, boosting the growth in trade of salt and gold to new levels. In the following century, the Ghana Empire would expand into Guinea as increasing numbers of Africans sought its protection from the multi-heritage Berber Maori who had begun migrating south to escape Roman domination and oppression on the north coast. On arriving in Mauritania, because of their historic relationship with the people of that region in a slave raiding capacity, the Berber Maori were unable to see them as equals and would soon begin a system of domination and oppression of the locals they found there, as had been practiced against them in the north by the Romans. Their presence in Mauritania drove a wave of mass migration by Africans south towards the Senegal River, entering the modern-day territory of Senegal from both north and east, with significant numbers opting to accept protection within the Ghana Empire. Another big wave of Berber Maori migration into Mauritania would occur 400 years later, around 700 of the Common Era, driven by the arrival of Arabs on the north coast. Their unwelcomed invasion into the territory would trigger another wave of African migration into Senegal, entering, as was the case the first time around, from both north and east. The Arab presence on the north coast and their eagerness to benefit from the trading opportunities that existed on the Sahara trade routes saw a significant increase in the amount of traffic going up and down the route south towards the Niger River. The close contacts developed through this trading would see the introduction of Islam, the faith that the Arabs brought with them, to the people in modern-day Niger. In the eastern part of the West African region, the various groupings of nomads in Chad and the Central African Republic had begun forming close ties amongst each other to develop a strong militarized state known as the Kanem Empire, even stretching across the Lake Chad into northeastern Nigeria and North Cameroon, and even north across the desert into southern Libya. Its establishment would allow its people to benefit from the activity on the trade routes going into Libya on the north coast, as desiccation in Chad continued to increase. In Nigeria, three major kingdoms would be formed: the Horsa Kingdom in the north, the Yoruba and the Unri kingdoms in the south. The Horsa Kingdom was an offshoot of the Soul civilization, which had been displaced by the emergence of the Kanem Empire around Lake Chad. The Yoruba in the southwest and the Unri in the southeast were both established practicing from the start religious rituals and traditions that have been shown in modern times to have come directly from those of the ancient Egyptians and Kushites of the East. An ancestral connection that the Horsa in the north also claimed as existing amongst their people. Sheikh Anta Diop points out in his book, Pre-Colonial Black Africa, published in 1960, we are dealing with an oral etymology that we find roots of right up into the valley of the Nile. During the 9th century CE, on the west coast, the people of Senegal established what would be known as the Takra Kingdom to operate in competition to the Ghana Empire for the attentions of the Arab traders on the Saharan trade route, exploiting sources of gold and salt within their territory. Further south, along the coastline in Sierra Leone, it is noted that the people there were beginning to carry out ironworking practices towards the end of the century, with forest land gradually being cleared, supporting the introduction of agricultural farming around the beginning of the 10th century of the Common Era, focusing primarily on the production of rice. The Takra Kingdom would eventually become Islamized after over a century of trade with the Arabs in competition with the Ghana Empire and other close-by smaller kingdoms within decades of the end of the first millennium, a move considered to give them an advantage in trading affairs against their non-Muslim competitors. Increased Islamization with the Ghana Empire would drive a wave of migration south into modern-day Ghana, where the Akan Kingdom would be formed, mining gold independently of the Ghana Empire for sale on the trans-Saharan trade routes. The Islamization taking place within the Ghana Empire and in modern-day Niger would also drive some of their migration into neighbouring Togo from both east and west. Further north in Burkina Faso, the Mossi Empire became a powerful force within the region. In summary, it can be said that the most notable occurrence in West Africa during the first millennium of the Common Era was the establishment of powerful kingdoms and empires across the whole of the West African region. There are a number of reasons behind why this started to happen, including to defend against possible slave raiding activity and acts of war, to take advantage of profitable trading opportunities, and to support the development of secure and large settlements. All of these motivations were in relation to the presence of non-Africans on the north coast, first the Romans during the first half of the millennium, and then the Arabs, both aided by their African and dual heritage agents known collectively as the Berbers in both Morocco and Libya. In the case of the Takra Kingdom, they would go as far as to convert to the Arab faith of Islam, at least partially to enhance their trading opportunities with the Arabs, who were keen to do business with other Muslims as much as possible. Contact with the Arabs on the Saharan trade routes would see a growth in the Islamic faith amongst some Africans in the Saharan region. The Yoruba and the Unri kingdoms in southern Nigeria were more remote from contact with the Arabs, but they were more than prepared to defend their culture against any form of foreign intrusion, including slave raids by traders from the kingdoms further north.
Love is like a blessing from the King's only love can bring the healing from the Queen's. Love is like a blessing from the King's only love can bring the healing from the Queen.